leave the battlefield. So that was a bit of a tragedy, but a bit of a metaphor for the French leadership here, in which we've not seen this. Now, one thing is here we have these French crossbowmen with their, is it pelsies or something? I forget what they're called. Their shields that they're bringing up here. Now here they're depicted as a large shield staked in the ground with one man behind them. I've heard them also described as a bit larger of a shield that three men would hide behind, while a fourth man would be purely responsible for carrying and deploying the shield and not carrying crossbows. The Genovese here did not have them, and that is partly why they were displeased at being here in the first place, and I think also displeased to find themselves facing a weapon that they hadn't readily before in the English and Welsh longbowmen that had superior range. And it appears within the game mechanics here that even up on with the height advantage, the longbowmen have not maybe had as much range advantage as historically at this time. It does very much seem that the AI is fully putting its weight over on its left flank. They break. They're dispersing. Okay, well, we're going to use, even though we're low on ammunition, let's just... yeah, just shoot straight in front. Well, I think concentrating right here, our firepower, would be more helpful. I think that Earl Rondell needs to come into this, even though it may not be best to charge in, but they fall back, and so that is likely our best outcome there. Drifting our forces what we can this way, observing the battlefield. Think again, trying to weaken the disrupted forces. Now here, we're fighting in the woods and not doing entirely that well either. They auto-break finally in their routing. Okay, well, we're going to bring these forces out here. I just don't see a threat, and I don't see these guys turning readily. To come into them. Where are the tanks? Well, this is before World War II by a little bit. No tanks yet. Well, I don't know, maybe these are the tanks? Are men on horseback called Knicks? Those might be the tanks. I don't know whether these would be considered the tanks, or whether tanks need to have firepower, so they would need to be cataphracts. You know, more Byzantine guys with bows as well. Don't know what Ben Bishop would say about that, but okay. These are just to me so spectacular, the modeling on this. Okay. They are turning to face my archers. And those guys auto brake on the flank there. Here. Shoot those guys in the face. This may be just another blunder here after blunders, but I'm moving out. I was trying to put maximum effort on this disrupted guy, hoping that they would fragment. Thanks, Arno. Yes, I do, like I say, do like these depictions. Okay, good. We've got another unit fragmented. Yeah, this isn't going to go well. No, I should not. I moved those guys off the hill, but we can see here that they're moving up the infantry and they're going to probably clear out this town with theirs. I wanted to do something to break the stalemate. Still not the best. I think we'll turn and face these guys as much as anything else by firing there. These guys have also taken a lot of casualties, so see if we can... Oh, but we will turn. Well, let's not continue to compound our errors. Not fun. Well, now we have some peasants showing up. Just what we needed. Yeah, that was a mistake here. They fragment. They disperse. They've rallied. Good. They charge into these guys. Right. Okay. Well, we're going to attack here. Oh man, that doesn't look so good. Likely no casualties, but we'll still attempt. Yeah, we're just going to face that way. They still have not yet broken. Okay, well. Been through Arno's ruse. Well, Arno has all kinds of ruses. I have no idea why or what they do, but he has them. Okay, I guess the lesson is just to continue to hold. Though I don't know that that's going to get us the victory we're looking for. The more ragged the banner, the heavier the casualties the unit has suffered. Fill in the gap. Down. Okay, well. Because we're in where we can. These guys are pretty ragged, so I'm hoping we can, well, not knock them back as far as I'd hoped. A good move to attack. Now, what do you all think? About something like this, in which we have obviously a real historical event with, is this going to be a flank attack? Flank charge, let's give it. No, I should have shot the arrows first. Damn, they fell back. Okay, well, we can still do that here. And things go, and the AI does to some degree what they did historically. And things do not go historically. What is, you know, how How historical do you force events like this to happen? These guys cannot help anybody out on their flanks. We think that a few cannons would have been great for morale back then. Is there actually a battle that has cannons in it already? Hello, logistics man. Yes, actually, this battle did have artillery in it. It was placed, I believe, right here. It had some effect, both historically and in this battle. I think from reading about the history of the Battle of Crecy and the artillery, there's very little descriptions of what the artillery was. Let me see, I do have the page open here. And that was in the last live stream that I did, but you can check that out. Well, let me just actually don't have it up yet, but it will be up copy on my YouTube channel eventually. Part 1 of Crécy. If those new here want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I stream for myself on the weekends. Love being here on Slithering TV, but I stream for myself on the weekends on Twitch there. What was the description of it? I want to quickly pull that up here. Let's see. The English army was also equipped with several types of gunpowder weapons. In unknown numbers, small guns firing lead balls, rebelquins firing either metal arrows or grape shots, and bombards, an early form of cannons firing metal balls 80 to 90 millimeters in diameter. Contemporary accounts and modern historians differ on the types of these weapons are present at Crecy, but several iron balls are compatible with being bombard ammunition have been retrieved from the site of the battle. So they had something that would approximate cannons as we would think of them. And I don't think they contributed a lot to death and mayhem overall. Now, I could readily see your grape shot type rounds against close packed either horsemen or these Genevieve archers being really effective, but they just are a extremely slow rate of fire. Even though some of these were breech loading, that's still very slow rates of fire, and I could readily see them penetrating the shields as well. I think the shock morale sounds more like Chinese, forget the name, that had rockets or something. Well, the Chinese, to the best of my knowledge, do not have what we would consider cannons until they sort of re-import them back from Europe, to the best of my knowledge. Now, they did have rockets, like you say, that were, you know, if they hit you or whatever, would be either deadly or significantly injurious. But it was a lot of the, you know, sound effects, the explosion, the fire, all of that would be quite effective. And I have read all of the Sharp novels way back in the day. That's historical fiction set in the Napoleonic era. And they very much think that the rockets that the English were using then weren't terribly damaging. Oh, freaked the horses out for sure. by the Napoleonic era weren't terribly deadly, but to be under a barrage of them, all the noise and just the explosions nearby, even though they may not, because I don't think they were shrapnel type explosions, though of course they did. Shrapnel was from around that time period, so that they knew of the idea. But mostly just of the explosion, impact, fire, and yeah, the horses. But you got to realize the bombard, maybe almost the loudest thing anybody's ever heard. Yes, the big cathedral bells probably could be louder, but for most people they would be up in a tower a ways away, so it would be bong out over the city, or where the cathedral generally is. There's a city where there's a cathedral, and that would be impressive, but it just sort of like surprising in a big boom, very loud, that would be very unusual and have an impact. So we don't really know, and I read you the sort of paragraph on Wikipedia. I'm sure there's more detailed histories out there on it, but we really don't know a lot, and so I figure they weren't an overwhelming factor in the battle, but that had a confusion in the battlefield. Oh, well, that's the thing here, that with this modeling this battle, there's so much less confusion than there was historically. So you can sort of see where we are now. You can see these guys in here. These are fragmented here, but these guys in here, most have run away, or most have run away by now, but there's a few still left in here. These were Genevieve crossbowmen, from Genoa. You could describe them as mercenaries, but they were sort of long-term service mercenaries, if you will. They weren't just like hired for, they weren't. There's a lot of Italian contadore that would be, especially a little bit later than this period, would be hired like for a particular campaign, fight on that campaign, and then the next campaigning season they might be hired by their previous enemies to fight against their previous employers. So they had no particular loyalty. These were people that were hired in and around even in peacetime, if you will, for the French king. But they weren't obviously defending their, and I think somewhat disheartened, as saying, I think they should be more disheartened, because what happens, they're ordered up without their shields, which are still back in the baggage, ordered up rapidly. They encounter the longbows, I think for the first time in any number, which according to reading, considerably outranged their crossbows, which they're not used to, and they decided to flee into the face of the approaching, not necessarily charging, because charging is a short burst thing, but approaching mass English knights. And the English knights, French knights, their side guys, end up doing more casualties to them than the English longbowmen, because the French knights just go into them and start cutting them down and cutting to pieces. Partially, I think, because they're in the way, and these are bodies of men that are going to disrupt them and their horses. Partially, there's, cowards, you're running away and whatnot, and you're betraying us, so they're cutting them down. So these guys really sort of end up doing more good for the English than harm to them, because they do very few casualties. I mean, there's historically very. So this is the big thing is, this is advertised as being Crécy. Okay, so so A10 would, absolutely, or no. So you got to understand that when you're trying to model a historical reality into a game like this, sometimes for setting up a battle like this, you probably need special rules, because there were particular conditions set at the time, and there were just so few casualties on the English side everybody agrees that they were light, but there's disagreements on the exact number, where we're having much heavier casualties here. So the Genevieve archers do almost no damage to the, just because there's almost no damage to the English, do almost no damage to the English longbowmen. They flee back into the face of the approaching multiple ranks of French knights. They end up getting cut down by the French knights, so there's skirmishes there. They break up the formations of the French knights. The French knights still are thirsting to get into battle, so they're all, because they want to get the rewards for, hey, I did this in the battle, reward me, king, kind of thing. And they themselves run into hails of arrows very effectively being fired, and to the point that all the tests show, at least most of them that I know of, that the longbowman is penetrating the armor of the time period, maybe just by a little bit, but you get penetrated into your body by an inch or two. Inch or two of metal sticking into you is not a good thing. It may not create a completely debilitating wound, but if you're getting hit with that as you're approaching, it's not going so good. Where they had been used to the idea of bowmen, which is also reflected in this game, that aren't a longbowman, having to hit a particularly vulnerable spot on these guys to significantly wound them, and or crossbowmen, which would have such a low rate of fire that they would take like at most one volley or whatever, and the speed of the horse over the terrain would get them before they could get another volley off. And trust me, you're not going to want to, Arno was mentioning earlier, tanks, the idea of, tanks rumbling towards you to an infantryman in World War II, even late World War II, that are sort of used to tanks, it's got to be a scary thing, because you're laying on the ground, because you don't want to be machine gunned from the tank, and you have this mechanical noise rolling towards you that may just roll over you. Well, here we have thundering hooves, and they're going to be enough that potentially vibrate the ground that you're on, and it's going to be another sound which you are not used to hearing. And again, this sound, and mentioning with the gunpowder, I'm reminded that during the Napoleonic Wars, when the Spanish come over onto the, fighting the French, and were aligned in battle against the French, and having like 2/3 of the battlefront, I'm forgetting the battle name, and the other third being the English army. The Spanish army is ordered to and fires a volley of muskets, the full line at the French. And that sound and that smoke scares the hell out of the Spanish, that they all run away. They had not trained enough and experienced enough to experience what that noise would be like, that it scared the creators of the noise, and they run away. I don't know if any of you by the description pick up which battle that is. I'm not sure the name right now. So noise that we're used to hearing in the modern day world, we're used to loud noises. They weren't, and it was just something sort of otherworldly coming towards you. Now, also here is open ground. Well, the ground was because it was raining. It was described as being too difficult for the Genovese crossbowmen. You see the little loop right there on the bottom of the crossbowman. You stick your foot through that, and then you use your back muscles. Yeah, I know, don't lift with your back, but they use their back muscles to cock the crossbow. Well, the ground was so squishy that they weren't able to do that well, supposedly. The English early in the day had unstrung their bows to protect their strings to keep them from getting wet, and the crossbowmen had leather hides that were tanned and whatnot, so they would not be as affected by the rain. So I think the ground might have also been a bit of a problem for the approaching horses. Not to the level of... Well, I showed up a bit early, Lanzer. Unfortunately, my predecessor here was having to deal with I think a sick family member or something that was up. And there was no one immediately available to cover the stream, so I started a few minutes early, about half an hour. So I think, you know, this isn't quite to the level of swamp that the horses can't move through, like you might see at the Battle of Bannockburn or something, but we are seeing a little too effective knights are here. Those times, if you got wounded, the chances are you would die quickly from within afterwards from infections. Yes, absolutely. Logistics, man, that is a real potential element of what's going on. Now, people had to get injured all the time, but we can see life expectancy, you know, I'm not just on the battlefield, I mean just, you know, in farm work and whatnot. So yeah, even light wounds could be bad, but we see lots of people surviving wounds. So you know, you're right. It's not a good thing to be wounded. Muddy ground at Crecy, the French cavalry sank into it, and the men-at-arms rushed in to massacre them. Not as bad as Andrew, but yeah, exactly, Plastic Gangster. And so I am bitching about this battle here because this is a new DLC out, and I'm very willing to bitch about Slithering Games, and I would really like to see somebody else's playthrough with this battle having even somewhat historical effects. So, and again, for those of you who don't know, Field of Glory 2 is a tabletop miniatures game that is been heavily played, if you want to call it heavily play tested, and they have simply migrated as, and I have not played the game at all, but migrated the rules as faithfully as they can. To the computer. So I think either it's one thing if you're doing a rolling up random battles with army lists, then you're getting something that is approximately by points equal, and then with a random battlefield that might favor one side or the other, hills, rivers, whatever. But this is a historical order of battle, and we see the infantry coming up here. Now, this is doing two things to this battle here. One, of course, it is, they've taken out these archers that were otherwise invulnerable to knights, because these trees are considered impassable. And see here again, they've created, this is just woods. They've created special trees to be impassable. They've created special trees to be impassable, though you start with some skirmishers in that once they leave, you can't return to it to sort of, limit the battlefield. So I don't know, create other special terrains. And so the effects of the day, the effects, I think the Genevieve are, somewhat, because they come as somewhat disheartened quality. They should just be disheartened at start. Okay, yeah. So the rest of the French infantry coming up will push more, have crossbowmen and other ranged effects on the battle that weren't there because they don't show up in time for an effect, and they just leave, seeing all their leaders already dead or fleeing or captured. They don't stick around for that. Let me just that face there. And two, it does skew the percentage of the army, because this is percentage of your forces lost. And when you bring on even just these junk peasants in the back, they increase the size of your forces. So whatever you've lost is of less percentage. So yeah, I think this could use a rework, and you could also, have victory conditions. I think we'll let such that either you keep the French foot out of the battle, either the French knights and the crossbowmen win it somehow, and if they're doing well enough, that just presumably the reinforcements would change it, or the idea. Now see where, I have to wonder, trying to play it as the French side, if you come in and play it smartly, oh boy, I'm not going to just, rampage into the enemy. I'm going to be careful, and I'm going to wait to, I think if I can get these guys to, oh, I should have turned, maybe, maybe not, to attack them. Be too smart about it. Is that an honest playthrough? Because yeah, if the French were even auto breaks, moderately smart about the actions that day, I think we would have seen a very different outcome. So it's a difficult choice, in my opinion, as to. You're going to turn and face this way. Nope, not good enough to attack. I think it could be simulated by tossing some scattered swamp tiles. Yeah, that would be good. Now they did give the defensive positions here, which really helped with the knights coming in. Be better than mutants super trees. Yeah, yeah, a few swampy tiles would be useful, and I definitely would say go to somewhat disheartened, but disheartened or whatever, the crossbowmen, because I expended and I would, if you could, I would double the amount of ammunition for the longbowmen, so that way you would take fewer volleys to scatter the Genevieve crossbowmen, and then have more ammunition to more effectively rain down on the knights. And I think with those changes, you would still have a competitive battle, but. Oh, did we shoot here? No, we didn't. These guys. Okay. I want to get the guys that are sort of ragged already to see if we can get them to be disrupted. The defenses work well against mounted knights and all cavalry. I suspect your knights were broken, but the archers weren't. Yeah, well, what happened was the Genevieve came in and did a lot of damage with their crossbows, unlike historically. So they weakened the force, and they had, you can see the emplacements that are out front, sort of like here. It had a bit of a ragged line now, which did allow me to bring archers. The artillery was back here firing over these guys, and I could have archers firing over some of these other guys here, over their heads. Unfortunately, all my archers that were started down here basically had nothing to do. So, and I did try to bring out a couple here, and which failed miserably, and they ran away after they got attacked by the knights out from the hill. So over half of my firepower, really almost half of my firepower, has been sitting most of the game doing nothing over here. So, and the French have really hammered, as we can see, this one flank. Not that that's a bad idea, but it's just, it's not what happened historically as in an uncontrolled assault. Now, if I take it very differently. If I was playing a human, because the human is like, well, okay, here are the conditions. Maybe I can do something different, and not like force to be an uncontrolled assault. Maybe, bring the forces on piecemeal like they are now, but if you've got the turns, you wait a bit, you bring your archer, you bring your crossbowmen up, and the crossbowmen were able to sit out here to where only the front rank of longbowmen could hit them, and have like 3 crossbowmen concentrate on them. So yeah, this could use serious tweaking, and positive modders will pick that up. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping I'm giving good feedback to whether modders or whether they rework the scenario or not. I don't know if they will, but this is my feedback on it. And hey, if somebody wants to play the current game out and show me, oh, here's how you do it right, and you have not just a victory, but an overwhelming victory compared, losses. Then yeah, it'll just be me that I don't play this game very well, which could be the case. But we see all these guys. I mean, they just all these fresh crossbowmen coming up. I guess I could play it like this. It's just sort of starting from the other side. I don't know. It sort of, because in essence it's sort of this way here. I don't know. So yeah, you can rotate it around. You can come in close, look at the really nice figures. I sort of keep it back out so that you guys can follow the action well, instead of just being a mass of close-up of figures of these guys. Now they're out of range. Now here we're going to shoot them in the face tactic. And these guys have suffered considerably, so we're hoping that they will they're going to hit, because these guys aren't going to do too well. Well, they're going to do better than I thought. But maybe now after. Yes, we were talking about him a bit earlier, and that he died in this. He was effectively blind, and that term was used in the description. So I don't know if he was like totally blind or just enough that you could make out blurry shapes, but couldn't tell anything from anything otherwise. Tell like, oh, there's a man standing a few feet in front of me or something, because it said effectively blind. So I don't know if like just black. And it's from a disease, I forget what, as opposed to being, eyes gouged out or battle injury blind. So he might have been able to see a bit. Yep, I actually tied them to their horses to his horse. Their reins. Here. Okay, I think we need to attack, because these guys are awfully weak. Fell back, okay. They're fragmented now. The input